Hey everybody, welcome to Purpose People Podcast. Today we've got a very special guest, Tracey from Introbiz. So it'd be really cool to hear about her story, how she networks, how she started by handing loads of businesses cards out to people that just wanted to make sales to really realize the power of networking, and then also take it all the way to Necker Island and beyond. So welcome, Tracey.
Thanks for having me, Daryl. Really appreciate it.
So Tracey, you are, well, even on your profile says the queen of networking. You've networked probably since small, knowing a little bit about your background. Mm-hmm. Just tell us the power of networking.
Well, it is absolutely incredible, really, because, I'm just a normal girl from Cardiff, grew up in the pub trade. A little bit of my story. I used to come down into my living room and it was a pub full of people. My father got me working behind the bar when I was 14. I was collecting glasses initially to start with. And then obviously when I think it was about 15, he got me behind the bar. And I was an only child. My mother had a slip disc, so she couldn't have any more children, but always wanted to be around other people, So I absolutely loved the pub trade. So I think for me, when I initially started networking, I didn't understand the concept of it because nobody had taught me it. And obviously when I first started, I got it completely wrong because I was primarily a salesperson working for the local newspaper. Yeah. And the last job before I set up Introbiz was working for Enterprise magazine. And my boss at the time said, I want you to go out networking. And I said, what's that? And he said, you go and get business. Well, nobody had taught me how to network. Yeah. So I was going into the room, literally trying to give it the hard sell. And it's not about that. It's about building relationships.
The modern day DMing on LinkedIn after making a connection. But interesting enough. And then what were your thoughts? So networking doesn't work when people weren't buying off you?
The first 3 months I thought I didn't get any business, surprise, and thought, oh my God, this is rubbish. But I always do think that when you're, I'm a very open person and I'm very honest. And I always say to people, if there's something's not working, get feedback and find out what, is perhaps, am I doing something wrong? So I went to some of my connections and said, listen, guys, I'm not getting any business from this networking lark. I think that's what I called it. I said, or am I doing something wrong? And they went, well, yeah, can we be honest with you? And I went, oh my God. But I'm a great believer of getting feedback because that's how we learn and that's how we grow and develop. So when they said networking isn't about coming into the room, giving it the hard sell like you did, because I'd go up to people and say, oh, hi, I'm Tracey from Enterprise magazine. I'm selling advertising. Is that something that you'd be interested in? And when you look back now, it's cringeworthy, Yeah. But I wasn't taught how to do it, and there's a lot of people that don't know how to network.
I agree.
Yeah. And then obviously when they said, oh, no, it's about getting to know people, getting to like people, getting them to trust you and like you and vice versa, the business will eventually follow. So I thought, oh, my God, But I started to do it that way. And people said to me, it's about other people. It's not about you. It's about what you can do for other people. Yeah. So I was always coming from a space of asking them lots of questions, showing an interest in other people rather than it being about yourself and that you're trying to sell advertising,
It's an interesting one because, almost by default, I think the way things work with me is that I went to a networking event, but I got to know the person that was running it, and they run an education thing which was attached to BNI. I think it was called the Referral Institute.
Oh, I know those guys, yeah.
Yeah, so basically what happened there is I did that first before I went and did networking properly. And I think that really helped me understand it, because without that, of course, you're going to go there saying, I'm going to make sales immediately, and then go, well, that was rubbish. And then didn't get anything out of it. And I think it's always, I guess the advantage I had in networking is that I took time out to understand it first before I went into it. And when I went into it, my results were higher because I understood some of the principles. Like you're not going to be friends with all 50 people in the room. You probably do business with maybe 10 or be connected to through 10 other people and major on those relationships. So I think that's probably where I had a bit of an advantage not to make that mistake, because had I not had the education, I would have 100%. Yeah. So when we talk about purpose, because you love purpose, you talk about it with me as well, but talking about purpose, when do you think you felt that you were doing purpose, where you woke up and thought, yeah, I'm absolutely living life on purpose?
I think for me, when I got mentored by Sharon Lecter, obviously, who was the original co-author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad over in America, I remember saying to her that I told her all my mistakes that I'd made. And, I said, it was how cringeworthy it was. And she said, but you sharing that with other people? I said, what do you mean? And she said, well, why don't you write a book about it?
Yeah.
And I said, well, I have started to write a book. I said, but I haven't finished it. And she said, well, first things first, you've got to finish it.
Yeah.
But obviously, if you share that with people, that's obviously going to help other people, isn't it? And I was like, yeah, actually, because I would rather teach other people how to do it, because for me, if I'd have known what I've known from the beginning, or from a young age when we leave school or college, how much better would we all be if we knew how to network? Because networking gives you confidence, communication skills, more business savviness, all these things. And if you can network in a better way, that's going to help businesses. So it's going to be a positive, it's going to be positive for the economy and obviously for other people. So when Sharon said that to me, I was like, oh my God, yeah. And which made me finish my book to get it out there.
Yeah.
And obviously now what I'm looking to do is to do more classes and more networking seminars and masterclasses, because again, that will teach more people how to actually become better at networking and not be rubbish like I was when I first started.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. You've been doing it for so long. There are tips and nuances and lessons and principles that you hold that you've got to pass on, so to speak, that maybe not in your book, because we've also had the emergence of being online. And networking online, which came in the pandemic, that was a lifeline to so many businesses, including the ones that I run. So for me, it's like, it's almost like having those masterclasses, educating people, because it's not taught at school. It's not taught. It's not a thing that when you see the subjects, even in business, like even business degrees, you don't see networking in the list.
No.
Yeah, it's absolutely vital to growing a business. And you always say, your net worth is your network.
Yeah.
And the reality is that if you don't have those the people around you, then you're alone and you're going to struggle. And then you're just relying on your website, or you just rely on your e-campaigns. And although they're good, I think for me, the power of networking is one conversation could transform everything.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you could meet one person at a networking event, could be your next joint venture partner or your business partner in something else, or, because, it stems from so many things. You meet one person and it's that ripple effect, isn't it? And it could take you on to other places. Like Necker Island.
Yeah, but the weird thing is, it's not necessarily, if you can approach networking not where you're just thinking about you, it's oh, do you know someone? And like immediately you go, yeah, speak to that person. I was with someone yesterday and they said, oh, do you know someone that does wills and trusts and whatever? Immediately I'm thinking, Andrew Stinchcombe, let's put me in touch with him. That's the power of networking, that like and trust people, and you go, right, I can help other people by putting them in touch with, rather than Googling and guessing. Do you know what I mean? I think it removes the guessing part of things. It's like, if like and trust them, it's good to recommend someone with confidence.
Yeah. Well, it's being the tomato, as I always say.
Just talk us through tomato.
So tomato stand. I love acronyms. So I've got my book, Master Networking, and I've got the networking acronym.
Yeah.
NETWORKING. Tomato basically stands for top of mind attracts top opportunities. So that if somebody's talking about, say somebody's out in the marketplace and they're talking about networking, I want other people, when I'm not in the room, to bring up Introbiz and Tracey and Carly and the team at Introbiz. Whereas if you're not at the top of people's minds, you might be one of many that's in the same industry, and somebody else might come up because they're more seen, they're more visible. Whereas I think, one of the benefits of networking is becoming more visible. If you're more visible, as Grant Cardone always says, if you're not visible, people are not going to buy off you. They're going to forget about you.
Yeah.
How many times, like years ago, you're of my sort of age group, Heinz Beans years ago, that advert was on the telly all the time. So when you think of baked beans, who do you think of? It's usually Heinz Beans, because they've advertised, and they've been so visible in front of people that people automatically think of Heinz Beans.
But absolutely. And just to back up that point, since we're doing the podcast, we've had free pitch situations since starting them, and we won every one. Why? Because we're always there.
Yeah.
We're adding more and more and more value because we're showing that purpose isn't just a surface thing or a buzzword. It's something that we live, and we're also connected to people. And one of the things I've said, and you'll be in that group now, is when we get to 50, we want to bring the 50 people together in a networking environment.
Nice.
Whether we all meet in a hotel or whatever, just to celebrate that we got to 50 episodes.
Yeah, of course.
Nice. But the connections in that room are people that are just incredible, because everybody that's been on needed their story to be told, and not everybody's on a podcast, and we're fortunate to be able to do that. But just pointing those 50 people in the room, there'd be some amazing stuff that just happens as a result of it.
Oh, absolutely. And, another thing I talk about is, people having a common ground. Yeah. And there's always a common ground in each and every one of us. Yeah. But it's just finding it and tapping into that, And I think when you find that common ground, that is when the magic starts to happen in a relationship, whether it be in your personal life or in your business life. Yeah. And that common ground, as I say, can happen instantly within a few minutes. Sometimes it might take longer. But it's that common ground. If with those 50 people that you're on about putting in a room together, there will be a common ground in each and every one. Sometimes, as I say, it just takes a bit longer to find that.
Yeah, I mean, the key one there would be purpose, obviously, and they're purposeful people. But I think for me, just getting them in the room, naturally, they all belong to different networks. They do different things, and they not necessarily all gravitate around the same thing. That's fine. I'd be quite interested just to throw them all in the room and then just take a sit back and just watch it all happen, because I do like people watch. Yeah. But so you obviously learned from this networking experience, and your friends have said do networking differently. What changed then? Did you see an uptake in business as a result of the new approach, let's say?
Absolutely. I went from no business in 3 months, and people did start to get to know me, and there was, luckily for me, I had a couple of people that liked me, and vice versa, which obviously gave me the honest feedback. But I think they realized that I was happy to develop and grow and take on board. I took it on the chin, that I was doing it wrong and I had to change. So I went from zero business for 3 months. From month 4 to month 12, I sold 95 grand's worth of business.
There you go. Yeah.
Just from networking in the right way, because it was all about helping other people.
What year was that? Just to give people context.
2007 I start. No, 2008.
2008. Okay. Yeah. I just want to give context, in terms
2008,
of the cost.
and then 2009 is when I set up Introbiz in the January.
So how did you get to that thing where you went from being really bad at it, say, to being quite good at it, to then, I'm going to do this as a full-time operation? How did you make that leap in your head?
Well, the seed was planted the first event I ever went to, which was at the Copthorne Hotel in Cardiff. And I sat there and I thought, I love this. This is really good. Going to events, meeting new people. It's what I did in the pub.
Yeah, that's right.
I grew up in that industry.
It's essentially doing the pub again, isn't it?
Yeah. But you were socializing for business within your job, Yeah. And I just loved it, because I've always been a people's person, always loved being around people. And I just thought, actually, this is something that I could do. So that was my first seed planted. But then I did nothing with that, because over a period of 3 or 4 months, I was rubbish at it and thought, actually, no, this networking lot's rubbish. But then when I could see how good it was and how powerful it was, I'd noticed in the marketplace that there wasn't any networking that would strategically place you with your target audience at the events. Yeah. So what I used to get quite frustrated with, you go to these events and there would be maybe people on a table of 10, you're on a round table of 10, and on that table would be 4 banks, 3 accountants, and say 2 solicitors and myself. Yeah. As an example, okay? Not always the case, but that, there was literally competition on the table. And I, although I say competition is more about collaboration, not competition, however, I realised that
it limits things, right?
Yeah, of course. But at the same time, I'm a massive believer of collaboration, and I'm not afraid of competition because it keeps you on your toes. But and it's obviously healthy. But I thought, I need to put people, why can't I ask people before they come to the events what types of people that they want to sit with? Why can't I create that? And it was, and that's what I started to do. Over a period of time, I got to understand the types of people, the industry types who'd want to sit with the industry types. So in the end, I didn't really need to do that unless it was somebody that I wasn't quite sure about their business. And I'm like, what type of clients are you looking for then? With certain companies what they're looking for, but, obviously you'd ask. And then I would put them on a table. So it was quite a lot of work. It was quite labor intensive in the beginning. but it was starting to work. And I remember just after I'd launched, or actually, no, pre-launch, I managed to get 26 companies join Introbiz before I'd even launched.
There you go. Wow.
But that was the power of networking because I'd already done it.
Yeah.
I'd already been in the marketplace for a year. You know, I'd started in 2007, learned my craft in 2008. And then sort of like, I think it was 15 months after I'd started, I obviously created Introbiz, but I'd already built a little ready-made network already. And, you know, got to know people and they got to know me and they bought off me before. And people were saying, oh, you know, I can't believe you've got people before you've launched. And I said, but that's because I've already solidified my relationships.
Yeah, and you'd also seen a
different.
need as well. You'd seen a need that was maybe not being met within the existing structure. And I think for me, when I first come to an Introbiz event, what was different was just the way that the way that it operated. You know, I've been very much used to the structural way that B&I did things, and it worked. You know, it worked well. It worked well for a season, but I felt that it got to a point where it became limited for me, where it was only as strong as those people in the room and the chapter director.
Yeah.
And what I found with Introbiz, which is clearly the difference, is that aside from what goes on in the room, and you move around, so you don't go to the same venue, so it's all around the experience, was the connections that you had, that clearly yourself, where we could go, do you know this person? And yeah, I do. And that could take you from local to global. And that was the big difference, that you had global connections. You mentioned Sharon Lecter, you know, Grant Cardone, the Apprentice guys, you know, the Dragons. All of a sudden, there's all these other connections that, with respect, the B&I world wouldn't have. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I thought that for me was what made it most intriguing for me, which is why, you know, we eventually ended up joining and eventually joined the journey. We liked it so much we bought the franchise.
Exactly.
So
and Introbiz Bristol, here you are.
absolutely. And I think for me it was that differential of, you know, you spotted the difference within networking, and you know, you bought your connections, and just because you wanted to help people, you were always trying to connect people with somebody else and doing other things. So that for me made me like, yeah, this fits. So I was driving, if you like, from Bristol all the way to Wales, having a much better networking experience there than I was in Bristol. And then obviously lockdown happened, right? Which was another whole crazy time. And you guys took the, I guess, maybe it was out of necessity, but you certainly were one of the early adopters in flipping it online, but then opening your contact book of people to be educated in what was a really tough time for a lot of businesses.
Oh, absolutely.
So, you know, and then you had people like Sharon Lecter, Brian Tracy, Jarek Robbins, all online, which you wouldn't get access
Les
to.
Brown, and
it
was amazing.
Les Brown.
People.
It was. So I look back, there was an amazing time because of all these connections, all these people that we were meeting that we would never be in the room with normally.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Which really set you apart. And I think for a lot of people in that time, hold Introbiz fondly because you got them through, you know, those tough times.
Well, it was important, you know. I mean, I'm not, anyone who knows me knows I'm not tech savvy at all. That's probably one of my biggest weaknesses. I'm useless with tech. Yeah. You know, you give me technology and ask me to do something and I haven't got a clue.
Yeah.
I'm better with people. I'm better at talking and verbally seeing people and connecting people. You know, it's what I love. But we just knew that we had to do it. It was our duty, you know, to keep everybody together. You know, we had a community. Why would we, you know, people were saying to me, oh, just let it go and, you know, and liquidate and just, you know, and I'm like, no way, there's no way. You know, these people need to stay connected.
Yeah, 100%.
You know, because so many corporate hospitality companies, and we were similar to them, you know, hosting face-to-face. Everything we did was face-to-face. And I thought, we can't do that, you know, and obviously everybody had to change, you know, we knew that. And it was good, you know, and it was brilliant tapping into our connections to bring these people online. And I've got to say, they were all amazing. But that is because we'd built good relationships with these people.
Yeah.
You know, and we got like, you know, Tony Robbins' son, as you mentioned, Jarek Robbins, to come and speak. You know, these people wouldn't do it for anyone. They choose who they want to work with, you know. So for us, it was great kudos. But it was more important that you know, that our members and our community could learn from these wonderful people. You know,
it was great because it, you know, weirdly in that time, I think it was just stuff I learned within that time. So as much as it was about connecting with people, just having those hour sessions with these different speakers helped me refine some of the things in my businesses, like for instance, in creation, the purpose playbook came out the back of some of the discussions that we were having. So I was realizing that's great, but how do I take this from one to many, and how can I make it clear enough to understand? And we didn't know when the pandemic was going to end, so it's like just being there and learning of these individuals that were giving of their time. Because you spend £10,000 for an hour's time with some of these people,
absolutely,
and they were online for free, giving back.
Yeah, and one of my favourite ones. And I'm sure you were online for this one, was Dr. John Demartini.
Yeah.
And I think he was crying on the call because of the story he was telling. And I think everybody was crying with him. And I'm not saying that was my favourite because everyone was crying, but it was so raw and it was so emotional. And he's such an amazing human being. That one was a special moment for me, was Dr. John Demartini. He was, Dr. John, if you're listening to this, you are an incredible human.
We'll put his little name on our thing just to see if he spots it. But no, and that was it. It was people like him, whereas they could easily have gone, oh, well, never mind, we'll just chill out because I'll go and hang out on my yacht and not be anywhere near anybody and we can get through COVID. But what I loved about that time was all these really successful business owners, entrepreneurs served. They actually came and gave back to the business community. So, having conversations with Les Brown and asking him questions. I'm asking Les Brown questions. It was amazing. It was a special time. And I do look back at that time through COVID where it was like, as much as it was about keeping connected, the education that was coming out, I think, helped a lot of people.
Absolutely. And obviously now we've got the training platform, which we're developing at the moment, and all the Global Summit, the Introbiz Global Summit recordings of Dr. John and Les Brown and Brian Tracey, etc., they're going to be going into the training platform so that people, once they join that membership community for the training platform, they will get access to all of those because, they're all going to be in one place.
Yeah. And as you said, you've got some amazing people on there that, that have given freely of their skills and their insights and stuff like that. So going back to networking, because there's a lot of people that when they hear networking, they just freak out about just the very thought of going to a network. I do say to a lot of people, if you want to grow your business, learn to talk to strangers.
Yeah.
You have a lot to say about introverts and extroverts around that, because I guess an introvert probably doesn't quite enjoy that, or if they do, they have to lay down in a dark room for about 4 hours afterwards.
Recalibrate,
recalibrate. Oh my gosh, what have I done? So
they're drained.
Because you'll get people that say, "Oh, I'm an introvert, I can't do networking, doesn't work for me." What would you say to someone like that?
Well, there's a lot of introverts, successful entrepreneurs, global entrepreneurs, and multimillionaires and billionaires that are introverts. Half the population is introverted. However, they've built their businesses because they do talk to people.
Yeah.
And it can work for anyone. But one of the biggest tips that I always say to introverts is think of it as this: sometimes an introvert will dread walking into a room full of people, introverted, but also shy, because there is a difference. It's not just the case of they're shy, it's just it does drain them. But if, like you mentioned the word serve. So I always say to an introvert, if they say that they're dreading or they can't do it, well, actually, I always say to the introvert, you've got a lot of value to give, haven't you? And they'll say yes. You've got a lot of knowledge. Think of it as your duty to transfer that knowledge that you do have to share with other people for their benefit. And when they're coming from a place of duty to serve others, it's going to step away from, or it's not all about them. It's about how they can serve others, and they won't be thinking of themselves, and they won't be dreading it because they'll think, yeah, I've got a lot of value to give. They wouldn't be in their business if they weren't doing that. They wouldn't be doing their role if they didn't have the knowledge. So if you flip it to say it's your duty to pass on that knowledge, you'll have it. And I did a lot of the training in Clubhouse during the pandemic, and that was one of the things I always used to. I did rooms for introverts, and they used to love it when I used to come in and share that with them, and they'd be like, "Oh my God," it was a light bulb moment for them. They were like, "Oh my God, yeah, think of it as my duty," And
I think for extroverts, it's them learning to listen more, learning to observe more, and learning that you aren't the center of the universe as well. To recognize if you're just still enough, you might find other people that could get you a whole load of reach, more than you. And I always say this statement is, it's not about who's in the room, it's who's through the room.
Yeah.
And so if you take your time, and understand the connections that are there, somebody knows somebody and knows someone, and I use this as an example. We were just filming a couple of weeks ago, Mike Tyndall at his house, the rugby player, and with Sarah and she obviously wasn't there, but the point is, not even Hello Magazine are allowed there, and we've been able to go there and film as part of a collaborative project. That's the power of networking, just Absolutely. By remaining connected and not getting put out of joint. If you know someone that does something similar to you, is find a way to work together.
Yeah, absolutely. And that I totally agree with that.
So on top of that, because you're a networker, but now your daughter is sort of like taking the baton from you and moving into that realm. So do you want to tell us a little bit about Carly?
Carly's amazing, and I've got to say, I've seen her grow. She's an introvert. She'll tell you that herself.
Yeah.
You'd never think it, because she is so super confident in when she hosts events, because I've encouraged her and developed her so that she hosts events herself when I'm not there.
Yeah.
Now, a couple of years ago, she would dread doing that.
100%.
And I've seen her flourish so much over the last couple of years. She's absolutely incredible. And when people say, "Oh my God, Carly's amazing," I'll say she is. I'm super proud of her. But I said she used to dread them because she's introverted, And there's nothing to be ashamed of that, because we're all different, right? But with Carly, she's such an asset to the business, because where some of her strengths are some of my strengths, some of my weaknesses are her strengths.
Yeah.
So we complement each other, and I'd say 99.9% of the time we get along. There's always 1% where we'll disagree with things.
I think you're both strong personalities, I'd say that. But the great thing, because that's what I've seen in Carly, is the first time she would run an event and you could see she'd like come away like, "Oh, did I do all right?" or whatever. And you go, yeah, keep going or whatever. But now she just does the event, and she doesn't need the feedback. She'd take it if there is feedback, but generally she knows she's in the zone and she can deliver. And if you're not around, she's more than comfortable to run it. And I think that was the thing, is she's almost like, I don't know, it's almost like at one point it was like she may have felt that she was following in your slipstream, but now she's confident in her own right to stand and run Introbiz if you're not around,
Oh, absolutely. And that's what's so lovely to see, because, I'm sure at some point, when I want to retire, because I'm not getting any younger. I'm 57 this year.
Yeah.
And I've got a lot of energy for my age, but there's going to come a time where I won't have as much energy. And, I'll either want to exit the business and sell it on, or Carly takes it over and builds a bigger business. And, she's certainly got the acumen to do it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure she could take the helm, so to speak, because she's brilliant. And there's things that perhaps that are her weaknesses that we can develop over the next few years,
So aside from, obviously, because we're talking about Introbiz, we've touched on Bristol, and we've touched a bit about Cardiff, which is where it all began. You have other members, don't you? You have other franchises. You want to just tell us where they are as well?
Yeah, sure. So we've got obviously yourselves, and we've got Cardiff, which we run ourselves at the moment. We've got Swansea and West Wales that Bernie and Mark Davis do. And they're doing an amazing job down there, so that we've got those guys covering that area. We've also got Claire Rees over in Sweden.
Yeah.
She's doing Sweden. And, they're a completely different culture, but an amazing culture, lovely people. And hers, it is slightly different over there.
Yeah.
But she's going to be doing quite a lot of experiences that we're going to do joint together.
We've got to do it. We've got to
dog
do it.
sledding. We've been on about it for ages, and we said no, because I think since lockdown, and everybody, when we were in lockdown, we couldn't travel. Now people want to go out more. But I don't know about you, Daryl, but over the last, say, 7 or 8 years, I stopped buying my kids stuff that they could just hang up in a wardrobe or put in a box or a drawer. So over the last 7 or 8 years, I've been buying them experiences, or we'll go on holiday. So it is all about experiences, because for me, creating memories with your family and your loved ones is more important than anything.
Yeah.
I'm all about just being in the moment. And I want to create that within Introbiz as well. So, I think we've got that with the networking events, but the next stage now is to do more experiences, because as you know, we've done some experiences abroad, which I've had the absolute privilege of doing. but I want to do more, and I think, with the franchises growing, we can create bigger experiences with more people and cross-pollinate each other's networks and come together as a bigger community.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think that's, the next level to networking is that experience space. And I think for me, the experience is that, you don't remember what you got for Christmas. Maybe you might this one, but the previous one, but you'll remember a holiday or an experience or
Absolutely.
a connection.
Yeah.
And some of the experiences are pretty mad. So, for instance, Necker Island with Richard Branson.
Oh, that was just off the scale. And I was very, very privileged. But again, that was putting it out there.
Yeah, but it's not only putting it out there, but you met someone that knew someone to get there, wasn't they? So do you want to tell that story?
Yeah, sure. So I was speaking at a conference for Pat and Donna Slattery over in Dublin. They've got a great, they do conferences, and the Make It Happen conference. And they'd asked me to speak. And I met them through Sharon Lecter.
Okay.
Because Sharon was asked to speak there, and they paid for Sharon to go over to Ireland. And at the time, it was the year that we were being mentored, and Carmelita and Andrew were with us. And she said, would you come over to Ireland? She said, it'd be a great networking opportunity. I never like to miss that. But also, I want you to come to say how good my mentoring is.
Yeah.
Because she wanted some verbal testimonials. And I said, absolutely, we'll go. So we went over. I built a relationship with Donna and Pat. Lovely. And in fact, I spoke to them on the weekend about doing some stuff again soon. So watch this space over in Dublin, maybe, or them coming over to the UK again. And basically, I stood on stage when I talked about networking, and as like the similar conversations that I'm having with you right now. And one of the things I'd always wanted to do was to go to Necker Island, meet Sir Richard, because he's my business idol, if you like, but also take clients for the experience, because again, it's not just about me; it's what I can create to offer an experience for other people. So I put that out there, and I came off the stage, and during the break, in the lunch break, a gentleman come over to me, Brian Chittick, and obviously Brian, and he said, I know someone that's been to Necker. And I actually said on stage, I don't know how I'm going to get there, but one day I will go, because I'm a massive believer of the law of attraction. And he said, well, a friend of mine, Hannah Kathleen Hawkshaw, has been out there 2 months ago.
Yep.
And this was February 2019, and she'd been out there December 2018. And he said, do you want me to introduce you to her? She had a great time. So I said, yeah, that'd be amazing. So Hannah and I got on a Skype call. It was Skype at the time. Obviously, Zoom wasn't used then by us. And we had a great conversation for about an hour. And she said, I really resonated with you, Tracey. You've got a lot of energy, and I'd love to do some collaborative work with you. And I said, well, let's do it.
Yeah.
So she came over, and I said, well, why don't you come over as a speaker? Because she was a marketing expert. She came over and did a marketing talk, sold a little course like 4 or 5 weeks later. And I said, come and stay with me at the house. So she stayed with me for 2 days, because I said, you don't want to eat into hotel rooms. I said, you can come and stay with me. And we really got to know each other. And I said, well, tell me all about Necker, and, just to pick her brains.
Yeah.
And off the back of that friendship and conversation, she said, I'm going back again this year. Why don't you come? And I said, well, how can we make that happen? And she said, well, I'll introduce you to James, who was Richard's tennis coach, James Kluski. James introduced me because he wanted to become a speaker, to raise his profile as a business coach. So I said, you can come and speak at our expo in Newport, which we had some speaker slots. So he came and spoke that year. And he said, what can I do for you? And I said, well, just introduce me to the Necker guys. And I said, I'd love to go. And he said, it'd be great to have you over there. And we got introduced to Trevor Short, who's the CEO of the Necker Cup, which is the annual tennis tournament that they do there every year. They were doing it twice a year before COVID, but I think it's only once a year now.
Yeah.
And we got to know Trevor, and I think he did his due diligence on us. And we said we'd worked with a lot of high profile people. But we had some high net worths that would like to go along. And he said, well, there's mostly Americans, and Richard would love to have some more UK people there. So that's what we did. We only took a handful of people, because obviously it's a lot of money and, timings and commitments. But we went out there, and it was an incredible experience. And off the back of that, then I got invited as a brand to go out to his cruise ship for his birthday, for his 70th birthday. But then COVID hit. So it got postponed for 2 years. But last July in 2022, we took 7 clients on his Richard Branson cruise ship, and they all met him, had photos with him, etc. And it was a wonderful experience.
But it's amazing how those constant conversations continually open different doors and open opportunities that seemingly seem closed, thinking, how am I going to get this? But if you talk to anyone that's done something if you like, spectacular or had a spectacular experience. It's ordinary, everyday conversations that are led to that moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think, if you want to increase your reach, get used to having loads of conversations.
Yeah.
And I think that's the difference between networking and maybe pay-per-click or Facebook advertising, whatever. The conversations can go anywhere, and ordinarily you find the like-hearted people and like-minded people, it opens the doors to continue your story and continue your narrative. So the other thing I wanted to touch on is another part of the business is expos, because expos, you've certainly done one of the biggest expos Wales has ever seen, and I know you've started, you're gearing up to doing more as well. But you just want to tell us what an expo is and the opportunities that has for people out there.
Yeah, I mean, obviously an expo is where, all these companies can exhibit their wares, if you like. They hire a table, they hire a shell scheme stand, and they can advertise in front of thousands of people.
Yeah.
So we started doing them in 2012, and initially we started off with 400 people and turned into quite a few thousand people then at the Lord Sugar one that we had with Lord Sugar and Grant Cardone in 2018, which was amazing. But it's bringing a lot of business, it's bringing the whole business community together in one arena.
Yeah.
And it's the biggest networking day of the year, if you like, because that's where people start a conversation. They start a conversation, they meet face to face, they swap their business cards, they look into each other's eyes, they get to know each other, they build interest, they build the rapport. And then obviously the thing that they've got to do next is to follow up.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, and I only want to touch on this because so many people don't do it, they collect business cards or they go to these networking events and they do nothing with it. So the art of following up is you have to follow up with people, because that is when magic starts to happen. If you don't, nothing happens.
Yeah, so because you collect all that data and then you just let the data die. Whereas if you get used to saying, having a one-on-one, having a conversation. I was talking just the other day to George, who's based in Dubai, and I know George online because he meets on Fridays, sometimes Wednesdays.
Yeah.
But never really had that conversation with him. We've always tried, right, no, let's just book it in the diary.
He's a lovely guy.
Yeah, we talked for an hour and it went like that.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my gosh, let's book it in for another Friday. Yeah. So and that's how the relationships work. It's just getting into those conversations where you start, it's not doing business with one another, it's seeing those collaborations, it's seeing those opportunities. And I think when you relax and just realize it's conversations that create the opportunities, it just takes all the pressure off, so to speak, of networking,
absolutely.
because you don't know where it can take you.
Yeah.
So have you got any tips for people doing networking? Just they've listened to this and they want to kind of dip their toe in. Mm-hmm. Have you got any tips for networkers out there?
Yeah, of course. So I always say be yourself. Yep. First and foremost, don't put on a front, just be natural. A lot of people that get scared, they're like, oh my God, we're in a business environment. A lot more people are relaxed the way they dress these days. I think since lockdown, a lot more people are a lot more casual.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have this perception that a business networking event that everybody's suited and booted. That's not the case anymore. So I think you can relax. You can be in a more relaxed vibe and mindset, knowing that a lot more people are a lot more relaxed about how they dress as a starting point.
Yeah.
But it's being approachable, it's being friendly, it's being warm. As you know, when I've been seeing people, if you notice somebody who's on their own, especially introverts, they hate being in that situation where they're stood on their own, go up to them and smile and introduce yourself, because a lot of people like that. And I did that once, and off the back of me going up to somebody who was stood on their own, 2 weeks later, I sold them £5,000 worth of business because I made them feel uncomfortable when they were feeling uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to share that little snippet. So
making them feel comfortable in an uncomfortable environment. And I think, again, it's going back to, but you're going into that room, Tracey, to help people.
Yeah.
And I think that's why you see other people going in that room, maybe not to think that way. And what I would say about Introbiz, and certainly my experience of it, you weed those kinds of people out really quickly that are there in it for themselves. And I think the network, whether it's Swansea and West Wales, whether it's Cardiff, whether it's Bristol, now London. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we've got the London thing going on.
Yeah.
And even Sweden, meeting people online. All those people want to help people. There's just almost like this, how can I help? How can I help mentality from the get-go. So everyone you meet in that room, it's like, But then you can see the people that just turn up and they switch their screen off because they're doing 17 other different things, and they switch it on. But that it's not. They're just doing it because and it's
or they should put their screens off.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we've had that one. Yeah, Tracey, that was in the history of Zoom. That was
But that was another story.
That's another story. We'll protect their shame.
Yeah.
Just make sure that if you're ever on Zoom and you got to go somewhere, turn your camera off. That's all we would say about that. But yeah, so what I'm saying is that community. There's definitely that community feel that everyone's there to help one another.
Yeah.
And talking about Bernie and Mark, and you're talking about James at Bristol, and you're talking about Claire and stuff. And Carly and yourself, it's you almost like, how can I help? That's almost this position that you start off with. Yeah. It's not the big hard sell. It's how can we help you get to where you need to get to?
Yeah, and I would say that the community, I'm proud to say that our community is a forgiving, serving, wanting to help other people. And someone said to me not so long ago, it's because you've instilled that into the business. And I think that's the case. Is it's like attracts like. Yeah. You attract people who are similar to you. And I think when you've got a community that are all about serving and helping and supporting, which I believe that Introbiz is all about, you've got a great community, and it's surrounding yourself with good people that will lift you up, not pull you down, because there's enough people out there that would want to bring you down,
Yeah, and I just think it's really refreshing that where you're in that networking group and everyone's there wanting to give, So you do the main thing online, and then you do the breakout rooms as well online, and I enjoy the online ones because you've got even more of a reach. I love face to face. I do that. I love doing that. But the online, I think the online is not you're speaking at people. It's like you're getting to meet people from Dubai, from Kent, from Manchester, from Sweden. It's just crazy how the connections all work, from Ireland or wherever it may be. Yeah. And randomly we'll get someone that's just found us from South Africa and decided to jump on as well. So I do love the fact that, in a little screen like this, you can end up all over the world.
Yeah, and that's what I love about it. And actually, since obviously we're coming out of COVID and more people are doing face-to-face events, the online, they're not always, it's not like hundreds of people online, but I actually prefer the smaller events because I believe that you can get to know people at a deeper level when there's less of you in the room and you can have better quality conversations than if there's 100 of you, So I like the smaller intimate meetings, and that goes in person as well. Like we're going to one in London this week, aren't we? And there's going to be sort of like 12, 16 people around a table, private dining. I love those events because, it's speaking to people at a deeper level, and you can get to know them better. It's about
the quality of the conversations. Yes. And I think if you can have quality of conversations, you'll have quality in terms of collaborations. And I think you can be in a pub and talk to everybody and just have small chit chat. Yeah. But actually the real conversations are when you're sat on that table around 6-7 people, and then let's go a level deeper. And I think what I found within Introbiz, most of the people there, the relationships are not on a superficial level. They're much deeper. You care. I don't speak to them all the time. I don't speak too much to Claire and Richard, but when they come over and we connect, it's like we know each other. We know where our stories are, and it's like picking that story back up and carrying on and say, how you doing and how's it going?
Well, they're in Tenby at the moment because obviously Claire came to see me last week.
I saw her online. I was like, Claire's here. Yeah.
So that was great. It was great to see her because obviously I haven't seen her for quite a while because of COVID and obviously personal commitments that they have and business. So yeah, it's been a bit tough to get together, but it was lovely to catch up with her last week, We had a great big hug and we were like, oh my God, it's been ages. Because Claire and I go back a long way. She was a member with Introbiz many years ago when she first started. Right. She was with Milestone Activities, and then she emigrated to Sweden with Richard, her partner at the time. And then they ended up getting married. She'd invited me to the wedding over in Sweden and I couldn't go. I think I was committed with a business with something and unfortunately couldn't go. But we've been really good friends. And she started off as a client, but clients turn into friendships, and then it turned into a franchisee for us.
So weirdly enough, I remember going to the Swansea Expo, where I met Mark and Bernie. I met Bernie obviously from the first time there, and then at the end of it, because Bernie was also running a Jamaican food company, wasn't she, at a restaurant?
Before Introbiz, yeah.
Yeah, before Introbiz. And she said, oh, Daryl,
Jamaican Jill's, yeah.
Great to meet you, whatever. Before you go, do you want to come to our restaurant? So he went to the restaurant and I saw Claire. And I think that's where you announced in that thing is that, oh, Claire's going to take the Sweden franchise.
I tell you what that was. It was the Llanelli one at the Scarlets, Parker Scarlets.
Okay, yeah.
The one that we did.
That's right.
I thought you meant her Swansea, yeah.
No,
but it was, yeah.
Yeah.
And they were the first two.
Yeah. So it's quite fun. And Mark, because I didn't realise, I thought it'd be Bernie in the kitchen, and it was Mark. He can cook all the Jamaican food. He's an amazing
cook, actually.
Amazing cook. I was like, this guy's a legend.
Yeah,
So
he is, yeah.
It's really cool. So how do people get in touch with you, Tracey? They want to go and dip their toe in and learn a bit of networking, or just want to come and visit. How would they get in touch with you?
Well, they can either go onto the website, which is introbiz.co.uk.
Yeah.
Obviously, all the events are on there, including obviously Bristol, Swansea, etc. Or they can reach me on LinkedIn.
Yep.
I'm also on Facebook as Tracey Smolinski. Or they can reach me, as I say, through Instagram. There's many ways that they can get hold of me, but primarily through the website. Yeah,
and one of the things I say is, it's like, you don't do this as a theory thing. If you look at the number of connections you have online and the people that are connected to you, it's something that you live and breathe. So, definitely reach out if you want to learn a little bit about networking. Start with Tracey, and she might signpost you to where you need to go. But
try.
All I'd say is, absolutely privileged to have you on the podcast. It's a privilege to be part of the old Introbiz journey.
Yay!
We absolutely love it and enjoy it, and you're watching that grow and emerge and the opportunity that comes. So thank you for the privilege of being part of that journey, and we wish you well, and I'm sure we'll get you back. And thank you for taking some time out, driving all the way over to see us sort of like in the middle of nowhere in the country. So thank you so much for
no
being
problem
here.
at all. It's been great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Hey everybody, thank you for listening to the Purpose People podcast. We'd love you to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, but also follow us on Apple, Spotify, Google and Amazon podcast platforms. A review is really helpful for us to get the message so you can make purpose a priority.